And then here comes the video recording. Okay, let's see. It's been a while. Well, for me, it's been a while. I'm sure it's been a while for you guys too. Ooh, hopefully this is the last one. Here we go. Episode 4 of Roguelike Deck Builder Tutorial. Here we go. I have been pushing it off as I do, you know. I'm really hoping that this is the final episode of this tutorial series. At least I want to get the deck building, card playing, the full cycle done today. And that way, everyone can go off and do their own thing, make their own sprite, and apply all these functions and buttons into their own game. So that should be enough. I do worry about one thing. You know, depending on your skill level, there might be a case where you don't know how to utilize these learnings onto your own games. So I'm thinking maybe after this, we'll have another session of video, less serious, less official, to kind of talk about how we would apply some of the learning, some of the changes that we made in this project onto our new project whenever we work on Roguelike Deck Builder. That would be a good exercise, because I do plan on hopefully using some of this in a future jam as well. I have been enjoying streaming a lot more. I don't know if you've noticed. If you are annoyed by some of the notifications that are kind of not relevant to you, but you are following me for other stuff, you should join our Discord so you can sign up for roles that will notify you appropriately. I have 4 categories: tutorial, stream, devlog, and some other news. Those are all the categories you can sign up for. Otherwise, come join and hang out in our Discord, because it's been growing. I have been amazed by the kind of growth that we've been seeing recently in our Discord channel. Wild ranges of game dev experience I'm seeing, like, you know, 10+ years of game dev experiences, you know, with Unreal and Unity, and they're just switching over to Godot to, you know, just starting out from school. I know this is looking like a little bit of a news/advertisement session, but you know, I kind of need to do this. You have been following along up till episode 4. Then you have been enjoying my video, which I really thank you for. I hope you continue to find my content useful. And if you're really thoroughly enjoying it and you want to see some of the contents earlier, or if you want to get some of the additional perks as a member, you could sign up for YouTube membership. That helps out a lot. I have been gathering some members, and that's been amazing to see. I know the beginning is not really amazing perks out there yet, but I really hope to expand that. And as we gather more members, I'm gonna feel more encouraged to find more benefits to give to you. So that will be really helpful and amazing. Okay, so with that out of the way, let's start with episode 4. Finishing up the Roguelike Deck Builder. I think that's it. What do we have so far? That's probably a good question to ask. We can add a bunch of defend and attack cards, and then we can open the deck viewer to see these decks that are constructed of some cards. Okay. Without getting ahead too much, I want to be able to just click on start playing the game, and then I'll be able to kind of draw from the deck, okay? Let's do that. So we already created a deck resource, and I think we mentioned this before, where we said, hey, deck can be 2 different things. Deck as a collection of cards, and then deck as something that you draw from. Now, while those 2 are 2 different concepts, but then we can also take the same deck to add a function called draw card, right? And then we expect the card to return with card with ID. That's the kind of format that we've been using. And then we expect to have shuffle deck. And we don't even need to say shuffle deck, because that can be assumed. I know we're just kind of jumping into this without any proper introduction. But I think we can do this. Let's see. Why is this breaking here? Not all code paths return a value. Oh yeah, right, because we're expecting to return a value and then we passed it, so we'll just do return null for now, so it doesn't break, and we'll fill up actual implementation of this later. The proper way of doing this is probably adding some little comment saying that, explaining what the function is, so we can remember. Draw a top card from top one card from the deck. Shuffle the order of cards in the deck. Another thing that I'm considering right now, so if you look at it right here, if I view the cards, it's showing the cards in order of me adding the card. And that's fine, but we might want to filter it out. And technically, I could do that ordering in the deck itself. But then I think that's actually a pretty dangerous and unmanageable approach. I kind of want the deck resource to not care about the order of the cards, more so there should be a separate kind of view card system that can do all those things. Ordering, filtering, ascending, descending, like mana cost and stuff like that. So we'll do that later. But that's something that I'm keeping in mind. Additionally, that would be fun. Actually, I'm also thinking about this get cards thing, where this was a function, if you remember. This is where you call so that you can get all the cards in the deck in order to kind of do whatever you need to do for the game play. And the idea is you want to copy the cards instead of just like actually sending over the object that is in the deck, so that when you make kind of in-game manipulation to the card, the deck itself is not manipulated until you actually update the card at the end of the day, right? So the problem is that I made it so that it creates a new list, like a new array of cards, but then the card itself is not a copy. So we want to kind of make a deep copy implementation. So I'm going to go into card with ID, and I think we want to look at how we can make a deep copy of this. I want to see first if resource has a kind of like its own copy method, right? Because I think duplicating is a common implementation of these data management. So as expected, there is a thing called duplicate. Let's see what it does. Duplicates this resource, returning a new resource with this exported or property usage storage properties copy from the original. So it is copy. And it has this like parameter for sub-resources boolean where you can do true or false. Let's see what that means. If sub-resources is false, a shallow copy is returned. Shallow copy being, it only copies the kind of like the top level, but then when it comes to what's underneath, it doesn't copy. And I want the sub-resource to be duplicated as well, because this usable card also needs to be copied. The problem is the usable card is no 2D. So I'm thinking, do we need to make it so that the part of the usable card that is information specific is a resource? And this is something that many of you actually pointed out on episode 1 and 2, is that, hey, don't we want the card to be a resource first instead of node? And I agree with it 100%, actually, because creating a resource allows you to make like serializable things, data easy. And especially the card information like mana cost, name, description, those are kind of like the resources. So we don't want to mess with that in the node itself. So we kind of want to do that. So let's do that and see what that looks like. Look at me going from distracted. It looks distracted, but it's sensible. So I went from trying to add these like methods to the deck, which I will work on. But then I noticed that the list getter needs a deep copy. So then I said, okay, well, we got to figure this out first. And then I went in to look at the copy method of the resource, which has duplicate. And then I said, well, I mean, I need a non-shallow copy. And then I looked at the usable card to see if the Node2D has a duplicate method, which it doesn't because it's a resource feature. And so I said, instead of having a usable card, I should generate usable card from a resource called card data, is what I'm thinking. So that's the kind of the order of it. You know, I know we're all over the place, so let's make a little plan here. I'll make you a promise so that I can stay focused. 2 things that I need to do right now is do draw card and shuffle, and then figure out how to do a deep copy of the resource. So we're doing reorganization of the card data. Actually, this part kind of is boring, and then kind of we have this like workaround already that doesn't require a deep copy. So I think we'll try to do the deep copy and resource organization after we have the functional game first. Because I think naturally we're going to have a playable game. And then as we're adding more cards, we're going to have the need for a data structure. So let's do the deck shuffling and draw card first, and then make it playable, and then we'll do the data management. That was a really roundabout way of getting into planning, but that's how it goes sometimes. Well, at least for me, that's how it goes. So let's say we have card collection that is ID'd by some key, and then its value is the card. And if you shuffle, right, because normally what we're doing is we're going through, when you do get cards, we're going through the collection by its values, and then that order is added by the order that it's added to the card. I'm collecting this card as something like, right here we have a ID to actually a card object, right? And then you have more of those, something like this, right? And if I get an array of cards and say, hey, give me the values, we're assuming that the order in the array that results from that is card 2, and so on and so forth in the order of the card being added, right? And because it's keyed and it's not an array, it's like a non-order specific data structure. If I want to shuffle this, how would you shuffle just the values so that when I say get values, it gives a different order? You can't have that. So actually, internally, I need a ordered version of this data. And that is why we might actually need two different data structure representation of this deck. So the first hurdle here for me is that even though I said, hey, why don't we keep these functions in the deck itself so that it's not confusing? If that's the case, then I need to have a separate data that keeps track of the array version of the collection as opposed to dictionary collection. That means I have to keep two datas updated. And I don't actually like that. So I think I'm going to create a new resource now, which I'm going to call, or not resource, I'm going to do a script, new script, representing a resource, extends a resource. And then let's call this a playable deck. Playable deck, right? This is the deck that's meant to be used in the play. And instead of having this shuffle and draw card here, I'm going to put it right over here. And also, this one's going to have a variable called, I guess, the deck or cards. I almost wanted to call that ordered cards, but I don't think it's required. And then I say card with ID. And it's an empty array to begin with. Card with ID. Oh, ID is misspelled, so I do this. Basically, I want the deck, the collection deck. When I say function get playable deck, I generate this playable deck resource out of the collection. So it's going to spit out playable deck. I don't have to worry about how to initialize and create this resource called playable deck. I just need to go from the deck and ask for the deck to create the playable deck. We have the playable deck, which is going to be a playable deck object, right? Or resource. We're creating a new version of it. And then we're going to return that at the end. It's erroring because I didn't define a class name called playable deck, so I need to do that. Playable deck extends a resource. So this has cards as array, and it's going to have a function called draw cards and shuffle. And maybe there are some other functions that we need to add to it, but it's okay. So we have playable deck. We create a new one. Now I need to populate the cards part. And cards were array of card with ID. So simply in the beginning, I just need to say, hey, this equals just simply the get cards version of it. Yeah. And this should spit out the array version of the deck. And guess what? It's so easy. If you draw a card, what are you doing? You're taking the card off the deck and then returning it, right? So you have a deck, you got to remove the first part. So I'm going to say the head. So in an array, you have the first index and then the tail index, right? If the array underneath is properly implemented, then there's no worry for performance. Okay. All right. This is a good point to talk about implementation of array and coding in just general in languages. Right. So what am I worried about? What am I so worried about when I'm doing this right now? The decision that I'm trying to make right now is array has an index, right? Each item has an index in the array. If you say the top of the deck, do we treat the tail as top of the deck or the head as the top of the deck, right? So you have an array where you have cards here, right? So on and so forth. And this is 0 index, and this is n index, where there's n items. In a traditional array, you assign an empty memory space with pre-assigned sizes, and then you just kind of populate one at a time until it fills up. Then you create a new array, and then you copy this over, and then start from this area like that. That's the implementation that's usually done. And this is all done by the high-level language. But if you're using something like assembly or C, this is the kind of management that you need to do. But these things are taken care of naturally. Now, in this use case, right? So don't worry about this for now. If I use the head as the top of the deck, look at this, right? When I draw a card, I pull this out. So now you have an empty space in the beginning and then a bunch of cards. Now the head is at index number 1 instead of 0. So then in order to make this first element 0, you would have to pull everything over like so. And that's an operation one at a time. So if this is what you're trying to do, every time you draw, you're shifting the entire data structure by 1. That's an expensive operation. Same thing if you're saying adding a card to the deck, top of the card, or top of the deck is inserting here, then you also need to shift the entire thing by 1 in order to add it. So traditionally speaking, in this format, you want to treat the tail as the top. That way, there's no data shifting, right? Because if you take this out, simply the tail index moves by 1, right? Tail index equals tail minus 1. And there's no data shifting. However, in a high-level data structure, they forego that implementation actually for that exact reason, right? What people actually end up doing is you have this like what's called a circular array. You have these like pre-assigned empty spaces. And then they keep track of head and tail index. So it's just a variable called head and tail. And so example, right now head equals 0. Let's say these were actually filled, not null. These are cards, right? So if, same thing if I say, hey, get from head, then it'll remove this and pop it out. And then instead of shifting everything over, they just add 1 to the head index. So it's a simple operation. So I'm hoping that that's what GDScript does, but I also don't know if that's what GDScript does. So To not risk any problem, I think I'm going to treat tail as the top of the card, so that there is absolutely no risk of there being a data shift structure issue. All right, so that means if I want to draw a card, I simply draw, remove from the tail. So I guess what I need to do is just get, well, I don't want to simply get, I actually want to remove it, right? So let's see what option array has. Remove from, append, there's appending. Erase, find, front. Insert is empty, make. I mean, I feel like this is a circular array from what I can say. Pop back. I think that's it. Removes and returns the last element of the array. Returns null if the array is empty without printing an error message. Right. So it'll return if the array is empty. That's good. So it's actually, I don't even need to do anything. I just say cars pop back and return that. And there will be, the pop will pop off from the stack and remove that card from the array. So I don't have to worry about handling the remove. Shuffle is also pretty easy, I think. There might be, this is funny. So the pick random function, do we need to shuffle? So as, am I cheating? Am I cheating? I am cheating. I think so. So there's a consideration here. Reason I'm pausing to say am I cheating is because instead of actually having a ordered deck that is pre-shuffled, if you pick randomly every time you draw, then isn't it technically shuffled? But then the downside to this is that users cannot do the whole like, oh, look at the pre-ordered deck. So I don't think we want to do this. So we want to actually shuffle it. Hold on. Hey, look at this. Maybe I didn't need a playable deck resources. Seems like it does everything. I mean, you would think that Game Engine would handle this. It actually has a shuffle method. Shuffles the array such that the items will have a random order. This method uses a global random number generator, common, and call. So implementation of it, I don't know how efficient it is, but hey, I love that it does that already, and I don't have to worry about it. So we're shuffling the deck by just calling shuffle. Simple enough. And then we're going to pop it from the back. And then, now it's a playable deck, so there's going to be a bunch of different functions. I think we could also say peak top, I guess. That's something you can do. Yeah. Reason I pause is because, like, do I want to get into this right now when I know I don't have any cards that allows you to do this? Like, this is not a mechanics that is required by my game currently, but it may be something that somebody wants to do, so let's do that. So peak card means it's like drawing a card, except you're not removing it. You're just looking at what it is. So it'll return the last back. Yeah, I think that shows it. Back. Returns the last element of the array. Yeah. So it'll return the last element of the array without actually popping it out. And then we might want to also have a put card on top. And then we're going to take card with ID and then put that on top. It's not going to not return anything. It's just simply going to put card into the back. So push back the card like so. All right. There might be some other stuff like searcher library, view library, but then we already have an array of cards, so we can just kind of look at it. So I think this is simple enough. I mean, that was really easy because once again, Godot being a game engine probably already figured that these are kind of functionalities you would want in a deck and then handles it already. Now we have a playable deck that can be retrieved from the deck itself. And if we go back to the main game, I want to be able to play the game now. Okay, so I'm going to create a button that just starts the game. So And then say, call this start game button and say start new game. And this probably does the same thing as the restart button. Like we implemented, I think episode 2, typing R will reset everything, the hands and everything. So it's probably similar to that. But I want to make sure I have this functionality. And then when the game gets started, I want to get rid of all of these debug buttons. We have main here. We're going to have an export variable called debug mode. And let's call it Boolean. And by default is true. Oops, I spell export wrong. Export. Oh, is it just bool? Oh, yeah. GDScript defines it as bool, so just bool. So you see this little check mark appeared now with true. And I'm going to make it so that when this is set, this value is set, you do a little colon after the variable definition, and you can say set value. And this is a little setter thing, which I think I've done on the last episode, where you can define what happens when this value is set up. So we're going to say debug mode equals value so that this variable is assigned. And then say if value or if debug mode, then we're going to do turn on debug buttons. And then otherwise turn off debug buttons. So we have inflict damage, inflict 3 button, and turn. Okay, so I'm going to turn off first inflict 1 button and inflict 3 button. I mean, technically, there's a way to, I'm sure, like assign these nodes with some sort of grouping and be like, hey, this is a debug node. And then just like go through every child and elements in the game and make invisible the elements that are debugged, so I don't have to list it here. But, you know, so we have inflict 1 button, visible will be false, and then inflict 3 button, visible will be false. And then these other 2 buttons, add attack card and defend card buttons, they are also a child of deck and hand. I want to be able to say func. Well, actually, I also want the deck and hand to have a debug option, and it'll handle its own debug option, right? So we'll have export var debug mode, which is bool, by default is true. And then I'll set its setter, same thing. So debug mode would first be the value, and then depend on the debug mode. It'll do different things. So we have button 1, button 2, button 3. Actually, all of these can be removed, I think. So I'll do that. Button 1, visible equals true or false. Button 2, visible equals false. Button 3, visible equals false. Otherwise, I want to make these visibility true. True. Right? Now, there's a simpler way to do this, obviously, right? Because debug mode means... Or actually, I flipped it. This should be true. 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 False. Right, okay. So this is an easy way to visualize what they actually do. But technically, you see all these visibility for debug components needs to be true when debug mode is true, false otherwise, right? So that means the value of the visibility is exactly same as the value of the debug mode. So I don't actually need to have this like conditional if-then statement. I can just simply assign the visibility value to the value of the debug mode variable. And that simplifies it a little bit. So I did that. Next thing, I want to come back to the main script and do the same thing here. I also messed it up here, but like this. There you go. And then when this is being set, I also want to set the value of its child's, right? Because right here, deck in hand also has a debug mode. Deck in hand, debug mode equals the debug mode of the game itself. All right. There's one thing that we need to think about here. I think we've run into this issue several times. In terms of order of execution, the onReady hasn't happened yet, or the scene tree has not been constructed yet. So these buttons are not added yet. So one trick that I've learned is to, when you're using these setters, you want to wait for onReady to be executed before running these things. Okay, so what we want to do here is we want to await for this node to be ready. And there's a signal that gets sent out by the node when onReady has been executed, right? All the ready function has been executed. And that is a signal called ready. Right here, you can see that it has a signal. So you can await on that. All the signals can be awaited on because signals are kind of asynchronous. So then if you want to wait for the signal to be received before moving on to the next line, you use await. Next, you need to do that in deck in hand. Let's use await onReady. There you go. And let's see what happens if I run this. Ta-da! It didn't break. It has start new game button, it has end button, but it seems like it didn't remove any of the deck in hand debug option. Oh, right. Okay. So the issue, okay, here's a mistake I made, and I'm pretty sure if you're familiar with this, you already know what's going on. So I trigger the deck in hand's debug mode setter, and if you come here, it waits on ready. But then the problem is game has already started. It's already ready. So if you're waiting on the ready signal to be emitted, it will never trigger, right? Does that make sense? So ready gets triggered in the beginning as the game object gets added to the tree. That has already happened by the time this has been triggered. So it moved on. So when it comes here, it triggers this again, this setter again, and comes over here, and then it just waits forever and never moves on to it because ready gets never called again. So actually, what you want to do in your setters is actually only wait on the ready if it's not already set up. So if is ready or is node ready, not ready actually, then await. Otherwise, you just execute the rest. And you want to do that same thing in deck in hand. That way it's not blocking. So if you play it, ta-da, it's gone now. Right here, if I flip it on, I start the game, it's back on. So that is it. So this is actually a common pattern that a lot of people use on the setter, on the export variable, because of this like exact reason. I don't like it as much, but you know, I just figured that I'd show this kind of implementation for people to kind of learn. The next thing is I definitely need to come back to starting a new game. So let's come over here. And if I start a new game, what I want to do is I want to connect the pressed, going into main. So now it's connected. And what I want to do here is I want to first get the deck, right? So we have the deck that we created last time. And then we were adding a bunch of cards to it. We're going to get the deck. And then get playable deck. I guess I could put that out here. I don't want to handle it in the main game, actually. I want to give it to the playable deck object. So I'm going to create a new one. So it's kind of a UI component. So I guess I'll do it in UI since it's kind of a UI component. So I'll go to scenes. I'm going to create a new UI scene. And then I'll create a scene called Let's call it playable deck UI. So this will represent a kind of node graphical representation of what the deck would look like in this game. And then let's see, maybe I'll create a little sprite for it. Okay, so I created this card back. I mean, it's kind of silly looking version of it, but you know, it does the job. So I'm going to create a sprite 2D here, add that sprite. Ta-da! So we have this right here. And this UI should have a script. Playable deck UI, like that. I want this to take the deck, which happens to be just array of, or actually it's just a playable deck. I want actually the ability to draw the card when I click on it, right? Actually, let's make this clickable even better. I could change the type to texture button, so we don't actually need a sprite. We're just gonna make the textures, the normal texture, to be this. Now, if you want to get fancy, obviously, you could also add the pressed hover sprite, right? I mean, I could do that right now. So let's say I do the hover sprite, and then I'm just gonna make it like this, and call this a hover sprite. And then when I press it, maybe I invert the colors. So yeah, like this. So this is when it's pressed. So I'll have cardback pressed image here, hover with a little white or yellow line around it. And then I'm going to make it so that I simply have a draw function that calls the draw card from the playable deck. And it returns that value like this. And this will be added into the main, right? So we come here onto the main, and then I'm going to go look for that scene that I just created called playable deck UI, and then drop it into main. Let's put it, let's see, where should I put it? I think I want to put it like here. I want to make sure that the deck button is above it, like that. Yeah. So you can view the deck if you want to, but I want it to be so that if you click on the card button or the UI button, then you draw one card into your hand. So how do we do that? We're going to go look at the deck UI. It has a signal called press. So I'm going to do the pressed, handle it in the main. First, I'm going to define a variable for that component or that node. OnReady var deck UI. That's going to be playable deck UI. And drag and drop that right here. And then simply draw, which returns a card. And then I'm going to add that drawn card to the hand. So we did this before where we can call deck in hand, and then we can, what is it? Not remove card. We can actually add card to the hand. So var card, right? I mean, technically card with ID, right? When you draw, it calls deck.draw, and that returns a card with ID, like so. And what do we do with that card? Right now, it's just a data representation, right? So we need to take the data and then add it to the hand. So let's take a look at deck in hand, because that's ultimately what we're going to call, right? So we want something like, do I already have a variable defined for deck in hand here? Deck in hand. I don't. I've been doing that. So let's do that actually. We're going to create a onReady var deck in hand. And that's just simply going to be deck in hand. I mean, Feel free to replace all these manual implementation with the variable version of it. I'm just going to do the one down here. And I want to be able to say deck in hand, add card, the card with ID. Now, obviously, this doesn't exist yet, I don't think. Because if you go back to the deck in hand, if you look at deck in hand script, it has remove card, but it doesn't have an add card. Because if you remember last time, we made it so that the buttons of adding a card is in deck in hand. So it didn't need to expose any ways to add cards to the hand. But now what we would do, we're going to do that. Let's implement add card here. Func add card, and it takes in a card with ID, which is a type card with ID, like so. And simply, I believe there's a way to add the card node into the hand, because that's what we did before. So at least this part should exist. So here it is. Reposition card, remove card by entity, remove card. All these things exist, but then there's a thing called add card, and it takes any node 2D, and then it just adds it to the hand. And if I remember correctly, I just simply give the card. So if you look at card with ID, it takes in the usable card, right? So we say card with ID and get its card, which is the usable card. And then from the hand, call add card, like so. Let me just double check on this. Now that we've defined this card to be usable card instead of just like node 2D, because I think what happened was that when we created this scene, originally when we added that hand function, this didn't have a type. But now we added this type called usable card that extends node 2D. So it'll still work. It'll still work, but it will be confused. So let's go back to the hand scene. So we're starting to do some cleanup, data cleanup, so that we're trying to reduce the amount of error that we can face by typing it hard. So we got hand in the script. It used to take just node 2D. I'm going to change it to take usable card. Let's see if there's anything else here. Same, take usable card. Right? Anything that is card that is considered to be regular node is now usable card. I'm going through. I think that might be it. Let's see. The hand takes in the card. The touched is just from the hand, so it's the same. So it's also array of usable cards. So I'll hard type these like so. Okay, I think that's everything we need so far. Now, I can't just go and work this right now. It'll break, right? So if I come over here in the main, now that I have this button, if I click it, it comes into the signal, it draws a card, and then it adds the card. The problem is the deck is currently empty. In the beginning, it's empty, so it's going to give null here. So what we do need to check is if null, or not if null, if card with ID, then add it, otherwise don't do anything. Now this pattern, I believe what it does is that since this is not a Boolean value, right? The card with ID is just an object. If the object is null, the if evaluates as false. So this is a quick way of checking for null value. So I mean, this I could easily have done it like this. If not null, do this. But typically, I believe this is a pattern that's commonly used in JavaScript, because they're very flexible with the values being null, false, not a number, all those things. That's a common meme about JavaScript, but that pattern is also applicable here, I think. So right now, I expect nothing to happen. So I'm going to put a breakpoint here. I'm going to play. Okay, well, something else is breaking. It says script inherits from native type node 2D, so it can't be assigned to an object type. Oh, whoops. I forgot to update the script. So remember, if you look at this playable deck UI, it used to be node 2D, and then I changed the type to be texture button. So then the script is no longer extending node 2D, it's extending texture button. So I got to update this to texture button. All right. Restart. Okay, so we have this deck. If I click on it, it needs to go to the break line right here. Oh, it already breaks before that. It tries to call draw here, and it's saying that it is nil. Invalid call. Oh, right. It's saying that the deck is null. That makes sense, because it seems like I never assigned a deck. So let's go back to that. Oh, right. It needs to be when the game starts. So how about this? I kind of want to make it hidden until the game starts. So let's try that. So I'm going by default, it's invisible, so I can't click it. So on start game button, when the game starts, I got the playable deck from the deck. I want to assign the playable deck to the deck UI. So we say deck UI, deck equals the playable deck. Right? Now I supply the data to the UI. And then now I want to flip that UI to be visible, like so. Right here, I start the game, the car comes up. If I click it, I want to stop right here. It's going to be null, and I want to see if it passes. Right here, right? It is null because the deck is empty, as you can see. It should fail. Yep. So nothing happens. If I resume, nothing happens right here. So I can unbreak it now and resume. I can click it several times and nothing will happen. Now, the idea is if I add a bunch of attack cards and I can view it, there are a bunch of attack cards here now. Okay, I can't get rid of this view. It turns out I didn't make it so that it goes away. So I'm gonna have to do that real quick. So come to the main again. This button is connected to this on deck button pressed. If the deck view overlay is already visible, then make it not visible. And also resume the game. Otherwise, do all these other things. Let's do that again. So I can do attack, 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 show, unshow, show, unshow. Cool. If I start a game, I have this. Now I should have some cards. If I click it, I'm expecting the attack cards to be added to the hand. Nothing. Nothing. Oh, okay. So that's interesting. Let's put a breakpoint onto this right here to see if it actually gets the card. If I click it, it comes over here. I call draw and card with ID. Does have some sort of card. It comes down here. Let's look at the implementation of the add card. It's a card with ID. It's going to grab the card, which is a usable card. So I'm going to step into it. All right, usable card exists, hand. And then I add the child to the hand. All right, let's look at the property of the card. So if I look at this, this is a card variable in the local. There's few things that could be going wrong. Position 4364, that doesn't seem too crazy. Oh, right. I think it'll do the coordinates after repositioning. So let's see. It connects all the functions and then it repositions. It's going to calculate, and hand has one single card. So it's going to come over here and then update its transform. And so now the card's position should have been updated. So if you look at it again, it's 0 and minus 1000, which is way up here, which is correct. But the card doesn't show up. I'm curious. I'm going to come over here and see if the visibility of the card is also false by default. So I'm going to do click it again, and it's going to come all the way down here. I'm going to resume. So this is where it was repositioning. So I'm checking if the card is visible. So here, visible is on. So why is it not showing up over here is my question. Let me think about this real quick. Just give me a moment. I'm going to think about it and then try to figure this out. Bathroom break. Let me test something real quick. I have a theory. It'll be really good to know. All right. Theory confirmed. You might be wondering what's happening. Why is it working this time? I swear I didn't change anything. Okay. Remember, now data-wise, when I do this, the deck data has the node 2D called usable card in the deck data. When I click this button, those things, the nodes, are retrieved and then displayed. It wraps it in this like container and then displays it. When I turn it off, it simply makes it invisible. But those cards are still in that wrapper in this container here. Like it's still here. It's just not visible. So when I start the game and then when I try to retrieve it, the card tries to be added as a part of the hand, but actually it's over here instead. So I can't put it in here. And this is something that I didn't know. And that's why I had to check it. But it seems like a node cannot be a visible child in multiple trees. Like you can't have a node be duplicated visibly in two different locations. So if I want to make it show up as a hand, I need to get rid of it from this part. More the reason we want to copy the card instead of just getting it every time we use it in different context. So let's do that actually. Let's make a deep copy and I think it will fix it. So for now, the functionality of adding it to the hand works. So we have these, and if I don't click this, if I just start the game and then click on this, you can see that all the cards are there, and then it's empty now. It's all usable right now. It's almost there, but I need to make sure that the data, when I'm creating a get card function, it makes a duplicate card, a deep copy. So now we're back to square one, or not square one, back to where we started. This is a promise that I gave, right? So coincidentally, it wasn't an option. It was actually something we must do in this case. So I believe I put it on data objects and card with ID, and we can duplicate it. But guess what? The usable card cannot be duplicated right now. We want to generate a usable card with a duplicator resource. So that's what we're going to do. Instead of the data card with ID holding onto the node called usable card, it's only going to hold on to a resource called card data. That's my goal. So let's make it card data. That is a resource. So there's two approaches I can think of here. And this is up to you guys. I'm going to do it one way, which may be a worse way than what it should be, but I'm working with what I think works for me. Okay? So I created a card that is a usable card, and I wanted it to visibly be confirmed. That's why I created this usable card node where I can edit and do all that thing, where I can come here and then like edit all these information. It also includes card image, and a card image is this sprite on itself and all that stuff, all that good stuff. Now, one way to do this is that actually get rid of these scenes, make it so that there's a card generator or card factory code that creates the usable card from the data. What I want to do, because I'm already creating a scene to represent the entire thing, I want the resource to simply point to the path to the scene, the packed scene. So I explain what you can do. You can have a card generator where the resource itself, so let me show you an example. So I could have a resource, right? Let's say I create a new folder called card data, for example. And then I can say create a resource. And then now that I have that resource, I can do card data like this and say this is a tech card resource. So now I have a tech card. And this is useful because what you can do here is that if you update the script, so this card data script, and I say export card name as string, card name, for example, then if I double click this resource, or actually I need to do var here. Now that it's defined, if I double click on this resource, you can see that I can update the card name here. So I can be like attack. And you can have a factory. So I can have a bunch of stuff like export var card description. You know, same thing as we do in the node itself. And then we can have a card factory or itself to programmatically populate this card node and then spit it out. That's one way to do it. But you won't have a graphical representation, the scene representation that is hard-coded in your project. It's good for saving space. It's good for organizing. I actually want the scene itself to be the data. I still want that. But I still want, I still want the scene itself to be the data. Right? Is that not good? Maybe it is not good. Because I had one thought, but now I'm thinking. So there is another way. So another way that I wanted to do is that actually for each of these resources, instead of having this, I just wanted to point at the usable. So for example, usable card scene, something like that. And then have a packed scene as its resource. That way, if I come here, I can just simply load the actual scene like this, right? Then later I can just say func generate usable card or something like that. Then I can just return on this scene and initiate. Cool. So you're initiating when you're using it. The problem is, what if I want to modify some of the data in mid-play? So I'm going to have to keep track in this data anyways, the mana cost, like the maximum mana cost. I'm going to have these numbers anyways. Name, just in case name needs to have name +1 or something like that, right? So I need to still keep track of that. I need to still keep track of the description in case there's something that I want to modify during the gameplay. And then I also need to keep track of the texture just in case there is a modification in the texture itself as well. So I'm going to have all these anyways. We're going to actually have to forego this scene approach and go to the resource approach. So let's do that. So I already define all the things that I'm going to need that I'm foreseeing. So this card data is going to have name, description, cost, and texture. And then they all should be export, so we can modify it during the data preparation time. Now, I could have a factory that generates a usable card, but I actually want to make it so that itself generates a usable card. And usable card could be a generic node scene that I initiate. So I could say, this doesn't have to be export. It's just something that I have. Usable card equals preload of this scene. I don't have it yet, so I'll have to create one. So create a usable card scene. Usable card 2D scene. And then it'll just be this thing right here. And then I'll simply do the usable card and initiate. And then return that to generate a usable card. My battery died on my camera. Well, this is unfortunate. Okay, well, this is a pattern every time these days with the tutorial here. Because like if I plug it in, it overheats. And so like there's really no answer to this. I mean, other than using my webcam, which doesn't look as good. So I don't know. But let me just finish this up real quick. And then hopefully my camera will be back charged. So the idea is we preload this pack scene called usable card. And then I initiate it. And hopefully, not just simply initiate, maybe we have usable card, and then I populate all the necessary information and then return this. Right? That's the idea. The idea is that it loads itself with the data from the resource and then return it to be used in the game. Obviously, it's breaking here because load is not an actual function. So let's make that happen. Let's do load. So we go to usable card, and then let's say the usable card uses a script. We gotta definitely attach a script to the usable card, and it will be a script that already exists actually. So we don't want to do that. Let's drag and drop the script here. under cards, we have usable cards. So we're going to drop this because we already made it so that all the usable cards shares this functionality. The difference is that you have an action defined. So maybe that's also something else we can add to the resource. So if you go back and look at the card data, there's one more thing to add. Export var. And I have a vision where there's a way to add multiple card actions. So let's say this is just an array of actions. And it's empty to begin with, but you can populate it. More specifically, I want it to be an array of these nodes, action nodes. They're action scenes. So we have the node with populated with this different scripts, defend action and action. So maybe this is actually array of, interesting. Let me think about this real quick. I think I can do that, yeah. Yeah, so the actions are just these scripts. So I think I can just have array of these scripts. And technically scripts are resources. So let's look at what that looks like, right? We have, I'm just going to copy and paste some of the implementation from the attack card scene here. So we got attack, damage 1, card cost 1, and then the image. So let's come here. Attack, damage 1, cost 1, and then the texture was one of these. And then I got to make sure, oh, right, I'm going to comment this out for now. I'm going to make sure to update the array as well. So we're going to go card data, attack card. We have an array, add element. I want to be able to add the script like so, like that. So I think, can I do an array of script? The problem right now is that attack action, which is just node2d that I attached with the script that has activate, is not itself a scene. And I would hate to create attack action scene, defend action scene for each one of them. I just want to be able to call the script, I just want to be able to call these scripts separately. So how would I do that? I'm trying to see if there's a way to make it so that we can attach or instantiate these nodes without having actual scene. I would love to just create a node2d and then attach this script. Is this technically a resource? Maybe. I don't know. This is a little puzzling. Oh, I could do that. Okay, so I can define as a G script. Cool. So on the attack card, I can say, hey, just take the attack action script. Right. Cool. All right, this works. And then create a new resource again as a card data. And then call this defend card. And of course, defend card is defend 1, costs 1. And texture, right now we're using this shield sprite over here. Defend card image. And then for this script of the action, we're attaching defend action script. Cool, now we have attack card data and defend card data. I'm not going to delete this yet. We're eventually going to delete attack card and defend card because we want to replace this with this whole thing. But I still want to be able to do all these things like it did here. I think I want to mimic this thing. So I'm going to copy and paste, copy this children, and come to my usable card implementation and paste it. So it looks just like the defend card right now. And now we're going to come to the implementation of the usable card load resource. And I think instead of doing load resource, we might even actually want to do init, like so. And it takes in the card data. like so, for example. Which means if we come to over here, if we look at the data or the card data, instead of initiating, I could simply say card, usable card. Instead of having this preloaded resources of the scene, I can simply do usable card dot new and then provide itself. And then instead of assigning it, I could just return it like so. Oh, you don't do self in GDScript. Or you don't do this itself actually. So you got to do self instead of this. Basically, I'm sending the resource itself to the usable card and then it takes that in. So that also means we want to do the logic of, oh, why is it breaking like this? What does that mean? Oh, weird. We'll figure that out later. So that means I want to populate the data here, right? So first thing I want to do is card data. When it's getting nude, definitely want to take the card, underlying card. So let's do that. Card is just a card. And then that's right there. And that is card have the, what are the properties here? It's the card name, card description, card cost, card image. Oh, we can do that by set card values, right? So let's do that. Let's call that set card values. Set card values. Cost is card data cost. And then next is name, card data name. Oops, I spelled this wrong. Card underscore data name. And then description is card data description. What else are we missing here? Oops, when did I delete that? Next is also assigning a texture, right? Texture, right now we're using card image as a texture. So let's do that. We got onReady var card image is sprite 2D. And then we got card 2D here. Set texture, and that will be card data texture. What else? What else? We got the actions. So instead of having this defend action here, I mean, there's a few ways to do it, but let's do it the generic way. So we're going to create, right? So we're going to create a node to the new, I guess. Set script to be the card data script. Card data, or card, actually I need multiple. So we want to do this for every action. So we have card data. And we have the, what was the, oh, actions. We have the actions, which is an array of scripts. Script in card actions. Oh, not var, but for. And for each of the scripts, I'm going to create a new node 2D and set the script to be the script, right? Action node. And then I got to add that as the action here. Now this is for doing the multiple actions, but right now I made it so that this implementation only calls activate on one single action. So we do want to make that change. We want our actions to be actions, plural, and that's going to be array of actions. Actions push back. An idea is we're gonna set the node and then attach the node. So we're gonna have to do this like this. Action node, set script and the script, and set the action node as the actions. Now it doesn't really need to be a node 2D, right? It can be ref counted instead, but you know, alas. Maybe it can be ref counted because it doesn't really need a representation here on the surface, right? So let's do that actually. It should just be ref counted, honestly. Ref count it. Action script. And then action script is just regular script. And then add that And then I'll put as ref counted here. And it's not going to be exported anymore because we don't need that anymore. And we're going to come down here and for action in actions, we're going to do activate with the game state like so. All right, these errors are driving me crazy, so we're going to fix this eventually. Our action.activate. All right, all the errors are gone here. I have a feeling that this has to do with some sort of tool tag at some point. So we're going to get around to it eventually. This looks good. So we do init in order to... Only concern that I have here is that maybe there's a onReady and the init collision that's going to cause problem. Right. Yes, it will. Because card image, all these things do not exist until onReady is called. Because onReady executes when the scene enters the tree. So technically, I think when the new happens, we're gonna make sure that the card is card, and card image is a card image, like so. So we can call onto that. Cool. Now what? So we have a usable card that gets generated with the resource. If we look back at the data, card data, it can create a usable card. Cool. Now, next thing we need to do is we're going to close all these things, defend card and attack card, because we don't offend it. And actually, we're going to delete these defend and attack card. A very big move here. The files being removed are required by other resources in order for them to work. Oh, okay. So it says hand depends on it. So we're going to go back to the hand again. We're going to go to hand scene. Ah, there's a test card. That's an attack card. Now we're going to get rid of this test card because we no longer need it. Go back to hand, get rid of test card, get rid of reference to the test card so it's no longer there. And then go back to here, try to delete these two cards, remove. Nothing, no issues here. So we deleted those resources. Now we got to go back to add card section, right? So in deck and hand, we have these add card button. Here, we used to just say, hey, attack card scene, defend card scene, and then initiate to create. Now we got to create these card from the resource instead. So we're going to have card data actually. So it's going to be attack card data. We're going to have defend card data. Instead of it being a preloaded scene, it's going to be preloaded resources. And attack card, instead of being an instantiate of the scene, is going to be attack card dot generate usable card. And then this will be defend card data dot generate usable card, like so. And then it's going to add these cards as a usable card. Oops. Cool. There's one more step to do because this is still generating these cards and adding it to the the deck directly as a usable card. We actually want to pass around the data instead of the actual whole card, but we'll get around to it. Let's test this first. Let's see if I can actually add cards, because right now we just made a major change. We made a major change on how the cards are generated. So let's make sure that works. I'm going to play. Of course, it crashes, so I'm going to reload. There might have been some tool stuff that I didn't resolve. We got a roguelike deck builder. Okay, let's play this. Hopefully it won't crash this time. All right, here we are. So the idea is if I I just clicked add card and it broke. Let's see how it works out here. Card, set card values. It says the card is null. So I was kind of expecting this. These things are not available until onReady runs. And onReady doesn't run until the object is added to the scene. So this is where it becomes kind of tricky. Because look, even though I said card is this thing, card is null because it's not added to the scene yet. Until it gets added as a child, it's invisible. So we're going to have to resolve this real quick. One way to do it is to actually generate this property called sprite card image as part of the initialization of this thing. So I can do this. Another way to do it is same thing that we always do. Don't execute this until the ready is available, right? The same thing we did in the setter. Let's see if that works. I actually do not know if it works or not. So that will be very interesting experiment. So let's see if it works. If is node ready, rather if node is not ready, await on ready. Well, that also might mean that it's not gonna, so we can't do this like we did in setter, I don't think. Because the problem is it's going to get stuck here, which means the new doesn't finish. That means if you come to the resource script, when it creates this new self, it won't return. It'll stay and stop so that the next steps that would have added the card as a child would not execute. So what I actually want to do here is do this execution when the card is getting added. So when it's about to be visible. We also want to go to the resource here, and then we don't even need to generate usable card as a resource because we don't want to create a node-based object until it needs to be added. It just needs to live as a data. But I also have the thing where it says, hey, when you're about to be added, you can do this. Instead of it being a init, we want this, I think, to be a load that happens after the node is already generated. Now that we clean that up, now that this is a function called load, or let's say load card data, and then we're going to go back to the deck in hand. So we have the resources here. Are we going to generate anything on button pressed? Because we're adding it to the deck, right? So we're coming back to the deck now. What we actually need to do is instead of generating the actual card, we're going to take the resource, the card data, and duplicate it, right? It's making a copy of it. And then give that data, the copied data, as the card. And we want to do that here too. And fundamentally, all the concept of what we've been treating as a usable card has changed. So we're going to have to update the deck now. So we have deck. We go into the deck, and then the add card says usable card. Instead, now it's going to be card data. Card is now fully represented by the card data. And we're going to have to update all the regular usable card data type as the card data. And we have a card data here. And everything is the same, but card with ID now, instead of using usable card, it's going to also take card data. Remember, this is just simply a data, no node representation of the data. It's just the data. We're making it so that the resources only handle the data until the node needs to be created. Okay, so now the deck handles this as a data. When I do get cards, I return the cards with data. When I return a playable deck, so here we also want to make it, okay, so now we can do duplicate here, deep copy here. Get cards. We say, hey, cards are duplicate of the original. And then we return it as card with ID. Cool, we added that. So we have a deep copy here now. What about playable deck? What was playable deck? It's also a resource. And it's just card with data. So I don't need to worry about anything here yet. Everything in the resource is now a resource only. Now we got a few places to handle the main logic so that we generate this visual representation, right? So if you look at canvas layer and deck view window, this was from last episode. This is where we view the cards and the data. You see this error happening right here, right? Because cards with data, and then we say card container is expecting it to be usable card. But card with ID card is just simply a, what do you call it? Card data. So we got to come here and we got to update this to be card data. So we have it here. Now, right before being added as all these card set position, these are node properties, right? So what we need to do here is instead of itself being a card data, we can come over here and generate, as we did, a usable card. So we can say usable card, new, yes. So we create a new usable card, which is a UI representation of the card. And then usable card will be added as a child. And once the card is added as a child, something's broken here, but it's okay. So we want to do usable card, and now the usable card is generated as a node. You add it as a child, on ready executes, and then once that's ready, position and its load resource is available. So we can say load card data, I think it was called. Wasn't it? Let me go back to it here. Load card data here, takes in card data. So we say load card data, and then we're going to load the card like so. Now this says the new requires it to have one more argument. Actually, I'm going to go here and see what's going on here. Let's see. Here, let me reload the project and see if that fixes. Okay, yeah, the error is gone. Weird. Okay, so now the card container is generated from the card data. Cool. Next, we got to make it so that the hand card gets generated from the data. So when are we adding card to the hand? We're doing it when this is clicked, right? So we're going to come here, go to the script. We do draw card. This is a resource. So we're drawing a card, which is a card with ID, and then we return it. And we made it so that when the card is being clicked, it comes over here and then adds to the deck in hand. And deck in hand requires card with ID. Cool. And then hand also take in the usable card. This is where it wants the usable card. This is where the card is added as a child. So instead of usable card now, I'm going to make it so that it takes in a card data like so. So first thing that needs to happen then is card data. We're going to make a usable card, which is usable card new, same thing. And then once the usable card is added to the hand and added as a child, now ready has been executed. We're going to make it so that the usable card gets loaded with the card data. And then this connection of the clicking is on the usable card. So we'll do usable card, mouse entered. I think that should do it. That's everything. So let's take a look. We made a lot of changes just now, so there's a chance everything is broken. Attack, 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 defend, defend, defend. First, I'm going to see if the deck view works. It doesn't. It broke. So it says invalid get index card. I'm wondering if this is null or this is null. So let's put a breakpoint here. We're almost there. We're almost there to a playable time. So open. At this point, card with ID is null. Interesting. So card with ID is right now null at this point, which means it received an array of nulls here. You see that? So something's broken either during the getter or during the adding of the card. So let's see what's happening here. So if you go back to the deck and hand, that's where we're handling the add, attack, and defend button. We come here, and if you look at this implementation, when the button 1 is pressed, we get the data, which is preloaded, and then we duplicate it, and then we add it to the deck. So let's see what happens right here. So we're going to resume, add. The card itself is not null. Cool. Card data. And then generate card ID. 0. Cool, cool, cool. Card is not null. It gets added. And counter goes up. Cool. Right? And then the next thing is, what about when I'm getting the card? So here's a deck. I'm going to put a breakpoint on get cards and then get playable deck, which will happen eventually. And if I click this, the get cards will be called. And here I'm checking if the cards, the card collection, there is something there. Okay, cool. That's still the same. And then we're getting card collection is not empty. So we come here, we get the card, and card is something. And then I want to duplicate that card as card with ID, and then push it back. Cards have null. So this duplication is broken for some reason. So we're going to go here. Card collection right now is an array of ID to card with ID. So duplicated card should be card.duplicate. Card with ID. And then I want to add the duplicated card. And here the card is the value. And card with ID, if we double check what the card with ID is, it's just a card data and ID. Let's type this hard. And card data are just these informations. Nothing too crazy, I don't think. So it should all be populated already when it's preloaded. And when I hit duplicate, it should work. So let's do that again and see if the duplicated card, if it was the way the script was written or not. All right, cards are empty array. It's not empty. I get the values. The card has something. If you look at inspector here, the card is attack damage 1/1, and then it has array size of the GD script here. So if I duplicate that, it says trying to assign value of type resource to variable type card with ID. Oh, it thinks the card is just type resource. I suppose that kind of makes sense because the dictionary is not hard typed. Trying to assign value of type resource to a variable of type card with ID.gd. Yeah, so this seems a little broken here. So I think the problem is that the card is just resource. So if I did this, this will like not break. The problem is I want that to be casted as card with ID. So let's see if it actually works or not. Yeah. This is a problem. I wish I could actually type the dictionary. Unfortunately, I can't. Values. Can I do card as card with ID like so? Will that break it? Let's see what happens if I do that. Oh no, it can't. How about card as card with ID? I have a feeling that that's not going to work either, but we're going to have to figure this out somehow. Oh, that worked. Interesting. Wait, but it's empty. Why is it empty? Hold on. All kinds of problem here. All kinds of problem. Attack card. Show it. Bam. Card is not empty. Duplicated card is something. So in the cards, I'm adding duplicated cards. Right? Duplicated cards right here. Oh, it's got nothing in it. Look at that. No information. It's just resource. How about I do card with ID like that? Okay, that broke again. Let's see. There has to be a way. GD script type values. Cast resource. GD script cast resource. So the problem right now is that the dictionary doesn't have typing. So once I add the resource called card data into this, when it spits it back out, the values, it thinks it's just regular resource. And because it's just regular resource, when you try to upcast it to card with ID, it loses all data. That's a problem here. So I think what I actually need to do, can I even do that? That's a puzzling aspect of this. If I do resource, new, and then let's say a duplicate card, and then I say duplicate card, this is a problem. This is a problem. Card data, card with ID. Yep, card with ID goes in there. So it is card with ID. Why is it doing that? What if I don't duplicate? What happens if I just do card? Is it going to break? Oh, I really didn't want to deal with this kind of bug. It's taking a little bit longer than I wish. Oh, it works if I'm not trying to cast it. What if I simply duplicate it? Is that going to freak out? All right, we do this. Add, open, twice, and cards. Have nothing in it. The duplicate, duplicating it right now is breaking it. Is it a bug in duplicate? Because right now it's a type resource when it comes out fresh like this. Ooh, that's not good. All right, well, that is so funny. That is so funny. I'm adamant about duplicating. So let's do, instead of relying on the duplicate, let's create a new card data so that it's 100% typed, right? And then we'll just manually assign the values, right? Duplicate, name, duplicate, description, duplicate, duplicate, texture, duplicate, cost, duplicate, actions. All of those things will be just original card. So I'm going to just steal it from all the resource stuff directly. So I'm doing manual deep copy as opposed to relying on its built-in functionality. Let's see if that works. Invalid get index name doesn't exist in the resource. Oh, I know what's happening. Wait, no, that still shouldn't. Oh, okay. Whoops. It's card with ID, not card data. So far, duplicate card with ID, not, yeah, card with ID. So it should be card duplicate, like so. Right, okay. I think that should work. I was so confused. I was trying to type it as a, what do you call, card data instead of card with ID, I think. How about as card with ID? Trying to assign a value of type resource to variable type card with ID failed. Same thing then. Let me try to hard code the logic by saying card with ID new, and then ID will equal to card.id, and then duplicates card will equal to cards card, but I want to duplicate that. Hopefully the property portion is okay with it. Oh, card with ID requires new. Okay, so I guess I want this and this, like so. Man, this is taking a lot longer than I hoped it would. It's supposed to be simple. Duplicate. Seems like a bug to me. Okay, it worked. All right, that worked. Okay, this is what we need to do. So it turns out if I use the typed resource as a value in the dictionary, because dictionary doesn't type it, when you get it, it loses its typing. So when you duplicate it and try to cast it and assign it to a typed version of it, it freaks out. And you need to do this manually. Who knew? So I'm going to do all this now that that bug is fixed, I think. I'm going to add, open. All right, now a new error. That's what I like to see. Right. Right, usable card instead of the card. I knew that I was going to make that kind of mistake. So over here is the card container. We made it from usable card to card data, and then we converted it so the usable card is now the node portion. So set position and load should be done on the usable card instead of the card. Okay, cool. Add, show. All right, now load card data. it's saying that the card of the usable card right here. Oh, if you look at the scenes for the usable card, the card portion, this part, is nil. Doesn't exist. Why is that? I thought by this time it has been added as a child. So I'm doing this on the main deck view right here, and then on the deck view window. Card container is being added as a child to the overall thing. Does it not execute it until it gets added as the tree? So here's the idea. I think, I see. So I gotta change this order as well. Yeah. I need to add it as a child first before changing this. I wonder if similar situation. So what's happening, I had the card being assigned first, or here for the container, and that's where the adding of the child happens. And I assume by the time this happens, the set load card data, we need these variables to exist, which means we need to do this after onReady has been called. OnReady doesn't get called until it gets added to the main scene. The problem is this card container itself, if you come over here, the card container before is not added as a main scene either. So OnReady hasn't run on that either. So we need to make sure that even this assignment happens after it gets added to the main scene. That's a little caveat of Godot that I think is really hard to navigate, I feel. It's still null. It's not nil anymore, it's just null. Let's see. I thought I figured it out, but it still is having trouble. I suppose we should add this set as well. If not is node ready, then await ready. Let's see if that fixes it. No, it doesn't. It's still null. Well, I guess when I do this, this is only creating the... Okay, I think I know what's happening. The new makes it so that only the script gets generated, not the actual packed scene. So I think I have a feeling that I actually need to bring out this onReady packed scene. Usable card scene. And bring that scene over first. And then do an initiate or instantiate on that. And then add it instead of doing the .new approach. So here, let's see if that works. Because .new works in a way that only the script gets instantialized, I think. Right, okay, so that we're up to a next part. This part is where script inherits from native type node2d, so it can't be assigned to an object of ref counted. Oh, right. So we got to update these to be ref counted. All these action. I knew that I had to do this, but I forgot actually. So if I go to script, attack action is ref counted, defend action is ref counted. Cool. Hopefully that's the last changes we need to do. Here we are. Add it. Display. Oh, yes. All right. Now we know for a fact that the hand's going to break as well. So let's fix the hand code. So if you remember on the hand scene, not the deck and hand, the hand inside of deck and hand. When you add card, it's taking the card data. And we did the same thing here where we did usable card.new. We want to bring in onReady var usable card scene, and that's a packed scene, and we're going to preload the usable card scene like so. Instead of new, we're going to do usable card scene dot instantiate. I think this should work, and we can display it. I can hide it. I can start a new game. If I click it, it should show up. Nice. All right, we got the card and adding to the deck. Oh my goodness. That's really long. Let's make it so that it's playable real quick. Okay. I think after that, I think we're good to stop. Because this has taken a lot more than I hoped it would. So not only can I do this, I can also... Oh, interesting. All right, I just caused a crash. So what I did right now is I'm going to add cards. View. I'm going to start a new game. I have a hand, right? I still want to be able to see my deck, so I'm going to click this, but it breaks during the clear display. And it's saying, remove child in base container. Container. Let me see if that happens on repeat. Yeah. So it's not the fact that I show the hand. It's when I'm trying to reopen the deck view, the old implementation breaks it. So let's see. So we got flow container, which is the window. And I get the child, and then I remove the child's card from the container, and then I remove it. It's trying to get rid of the card. The object derived class of argument 1, resource card data. Oh, okay, yeah. So it's trying to remove the card from the child, but the card is a card data, not the usable card. So when I say card with it, this part, when I do this, I made it so that this is just a data, and then I create a usable card and I add it as a child. All right, so the issue here is that during the deck view window, when I'm clearing it, I'm removing a child, and then I'm removing what I used to be the property.card. And this used to be a usable card, which means it's a node. So I said, hey, remove that. But now it's a card data, and it doesn't exist as a child, so it doesn't really make sense. So what I need to do here is actually, I kind of want to add a new function called remove. So what I want to actually do is I want the card container to remove its own child. So it's not really confusing, right? Or have this usable card as one of the parameters. So I can have usable card, which is a usable card, and then that gets assigned as a result here, like so. So card data gets set and usable card gets updated. So then over here, instead of just calling card, I can say, hey, remove your own usable card, like so. And then remove itself. That should work. We got it here. Nothing. Attack. Show, remove, show, remove, show, remove, show, remove. Okay, cool. If I start the card, nice. I can do this. Only problem right now is that, it seems like it's not, I can't click it. So that has not been implemented properly. So we're going to come over here and look at the card, usable card. Now, I thought I oh, right. I see what happened here. So I didn't do the mouse entered and mouse exited. So we're going to do that actually. Because we just newly created this usable card scene, not just copy and pasted everything. So it's not connected. So we're going to do that. Mouse entered. And then I'm going to pick actually. The appropriate method. It doesn't seem like usable card has. Okay. I don't need to pick it, I guess. And then connect. So now it should be properly connected. Cool. So now the whole clickable event should work. Attack. Remove show. Start the game. And then I can hover over like I used to. And if I should click, should work, yeah. And then if I restart. Oh. Now my R key doesn't put the card back into this. It just clears it. So we got to do that now. So if you remember over here. So if we go back to the main. And then we used to have an input handler for restart. And we have a restart function, restart game function. And I made it so that a player character gets reset. And then deck and hand resets itself. I just simply did empty hand, but now it needs to actually redo the deck shuffle. So we empty the hand. All right, so we empty the hand. The deck hand does reset. But also, I need to make it so that the deck UI's deck resets the game. So we're gonna have to replace the deck on restart. So on restart here, empty the hand, and then the deck UI receives the deck again from the original deck. So it gets filled up again. Boom. Okay, so we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 cards. Start cards. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 cards. And then I can use it, end turn. I can do it, end turn. And then no more cards, so I'm gonna restart. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And then it's still all there. Beautiful. All right. Now, I kind of want to do that on start new game as well, right? Not just restart game. So actually, I want to come over here. And on start new game button pressed, call restart game instead. And then this deck UI visible should also be part of this. Now, I can add a bunch of cards, start new game, and then I can do these. Like so. Right. And then if I do this, it clears everything out and resets. Then I can end turn. It's kind of playable. I have a deck, I have a hand. I can view deck permanently. I can restart the game. Awesome. Only thing right now is when we come over here, and if I do debug mode off, I can't add any cards. It's empty. So that's a problem. Oh gosh. There was a portion of the video that I thought I was recording, which I wasn't, but you know, that's everything for now. I really wanted to do the rest of the game today, but it seems like it's kind of overextending itself a little bit. So next time, I think we're in a good place. We needed to do that cleanup anyway. So we got to clean up the card data so that it comes from the resource instead of the node itself. And then we were able to kind of view the deck as we did before, but cleanly. And now we can draw cards from the deck. Now we have a playable deck we can work with. In fact, we can use that playable deck to have a kind of discard pile as well if we want to, right? Because essentially you have a playable deck as a main deck and you have a playable deck as a discard pile. You are basically just adding card to the playable deck that is called discard, and then you just need to dump all that into the new deck whenever you're done with it. So that's the next thing we're gonna do, and that's gonna be a full game loop, and hopefully that's gonna be the last one. I keep saying next one is gonna be the last lesson, but you know, that's the nature of game development. I'm enjoying this series so far. I hope that you guys are following along nicely. If you are having any trouble, you can always join our Discord channel with a bunch of great people in there, you know, sharing their own games. Mainly, I'm there to answer any questions you have. So feel free to join the Discord. I'll leave that link in the description. Until the next time, goodbye and have a great game development session. Bye.